And so, is it wrong to withdraw from this physical experience? We're going to ask you questions, and you try to answer them, if you can, from the point of view that you think your inner being would be answering. So we're asking you to answer these questions as you think your inner being would be asking, or as your inner being would be approaching the subjects. When you get sick, have you done something wrong?
No.
Is sickness a punishment for bad living?
No.
Is having dementia a path of least resistance to moving into non-physical?
My inner beings are answering? Yes. It doesn't feel like it sometimes.
So you have a conversation that you want to have with your inner being about that. Your inner being says that dementia is one of the paths of least resistance into non-physical. And so what do you want to say? Argue that point. If you don't believe that, give us your reason for that. You don't have a reason. You've just thought it for a while. But what's at the basis of what you've been thinking for a while?
Just that she's suffering.
But there's something else that we want to help you to understand. Is death a good thing or a bad thing?
Good thing.
Oh, you answered that really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're answering it from the point of view of your inner being, because there is no death.
Right.
Is there any death? No, there's no death. So if death is a good thing, and dementia is a path of least resistance on the way to that broader perspective, then what's the argument that you have with your inner being about any of this? Do you really have any argument?
I guess not, when I think of it like that.
What thoughts do you think you've been practicing that are in your way of letting this be a good thing, not a bad thing?
Just that the process is just so painful to watch, and it's painful for her. And it just seems, as far as like a path of least resistance, it just feels like so much resistance to get to that end point.
So when you see a child learning to walk, do you say, I can't look, it is so painful?
No.
Most people are up walking around, not that one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That may be one of the clumsiest people I have ever seen.
Right.
Or do you look at the big picture?
Big picture?
So could you take another look? Is it painful to watch somebody on their path of least resistance? Here's what happens. Humans get all tangled up in stuff about whether they should die, whether they shouldn't die, whether they can prevent themselves from dying. They get all wadded up in all of this, and that's why they have experiences that are of great resistance, because the path of least resistance is just to make their transition easily. But humans don't usually make their transitions easily because they're not yet allowing themselves to feel the freedom to die. I'm not done with this life. I haven't been good enough. I'm not worthy enough to die yet. I haven't done what I was supposed to do. In other words, you've got all these bogus things that are in your way, and so you make a struggle out of things that you don't need to make a struggle out of. You know what the cat does when it has enough? It runs into the street.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you say, oh, that was so hard to watch. And the cat says, I'm out of here. You think we're kidding. We're not kidding at all. So we're going to ask you some inner being questions again. Is death a bad thing or a good thing?
It's a good thing.
So you want to say, okay, I'll go along. It's a good thing. I'm just not ready yet. So let's get into this. Why would anyone not be ready to continue to have ongoing life? What is it that you've done in your way of approaching life that makes you want to hear us when we say you're eternal, and want to hear us when we say that you will remain focused and you will still have a perspective and that you don't go anywhere and that there's no ending to who you are? You want to hear all of that, but what thoughts do you practice on a pretty regular basis that make that a struggle for you to know that? You guys got to get over this death thing, because everybody you know is going to die, and you are too. Even though there's no death. In other words, you're all going to have the experience. So when you practice not liking it, every time somebody looks like they're going to do it, or every time somebody's done it, you set yourself up for stuff that's going to bite you in the butt later. Mm-hmm. Esther was at a party the other night with her daughter and her daughter's friends. And they had a big room at the top of the AT&T Center, and they were watching the Spurs game way, way down there. Far, 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 far away. And one of Esther's daughter's friends slipped in to the seat next to Esther and said hello. Esther says hello. her friend says, I hear you have built a new house. Esther said, yes, I like it so much. I hear that you are in the neighborhood where Tracy lives. Yes, I like that so much. And then her friend said, that is such a good thing that you're right there where Tracy can help you. And Esther says, I'm going to put Tracy in a home soon. She's become quite a burden to me. This girl didn't know what to think of Esther. Esther said, oh, it's only about fun. It's not about anything else. But this lovely girl argued for her point of view. Oh, but I mean, you're not always going to feel like climbing up on the ladder. And Esther said, and? She said, as she could see, Esther was revving up for the kill. She says, well, I'm not talking about now. I'm talking about later. And Esther said, you know, these conversations are what causes this general diminishment of people. So as you tell that story, that's setting up your future experience. But I'd appreciate it if you don't tell that story about me. And she said, okay. And then she told Tracy, I think I made your mom mad. And Tracy said, did my friend make you mad? And Esther said, she didn't make me mad. She made me want to speak to the world at large. Tell the story that you want to tell about how you want your life to unfold. And when you buy in, just because you've been observing that's the way other people are living, you don't have to tell the story just because that's the way it is with so many people. Tell the story the way you want your story to be. The universe is responding to your vibration. And so if Esther had sat there and listened to the story, Esther was polite enough. But if Esther had sat there and been in vibrational agreement with what this girl was saying, Esther had a choice right then. She could know what her inner being knows about all of this, or she could listen to the version that this woman was offering. Which one do you think Esther chose?
Esther's version.
And could Esther have been more polite to the woman? Oh yeah, I know what you mean. We're all going to get old and fall off ladders. And I'm so glad I live on the street with Tracy, because she'll have a key, and if I don't show up, she'll be able to get in and find me dead in the pantry. I don't have any stairs, so I won't be falling down any stairs, but you know, things happen. Things fall from the ceiling on people. I know what you mean. Age is a-coming. Death's right around the corner. In other words, you tell the worst stories to yourself about each other. And every time you do, you feel bad because your inner being isn't telling that story. And you just got to start practicing some other stories. And then realists will say, we're just telling it like it is. This woman's husband is a doctor, and he knows all the things that go wrong with old people. And so you just get to decide. You get to decide whether you want to see yourself through the eyes of Source or whether you want to see yourself through the eyes of vulnerable others. It just comes down to that much. And just because you have someone that you care about in a situation where a lot of people are looking at her through the eyes of vulnerable others doesn't mean that it is your responsibility to do the same thing. And we are giving it everything we've got to convince you that you do not owe it to anybody to go that way just because that's the way almost everybody goes. They're not right about this. They're wrong about this. People diminish as they move through time because people tell those stories about diminishment. That's all. That's all. Do you know there are so many cultures where the older you are, the wiser you are? And you know why that is? Because the more you become connected with non-physical, the less you become attached to the things of a physical nature, the less you care about what other people think. There is so much freedom in moving through time and connecting with Source energy, who is ageless and timeless, you see. And so what's happening to you at your very early age in life, you're having an opportunity to pick how you want to feel about these things that are going to happen to everybody. And you get to tell the story the way you want it to be. And when you stop feeling guilty about telling a story the way that they don't want to hear it, then the law of attraction won't put you in a place where you have to tell that story. In other words, what Esther was mostly thinking as she was sitting there listening is, how did you get over here? Why are you sitting here next to me? What did I do to you?
That's, yeah, is this, did I create this, or did she create this?
You both are, but that's past tense. And now every day you get to make a new decision about how you want it to go. All of you have created the story the way you don't want it to be on one subject or another, but every moment's a new moment where you can revise the story. And in every moment, it's easy to revise the story to your advantage and to everyone else's advantage too, because your inner being is always revising the story to your advantage. Even the death experience is the revision of the story to your advantage. When a doctor says, this could go on like this in this miserable way for 6 years, what the hell?
I know.
Why would you say that to me? Do I not look sad enough? Do you need me to be sadder? No, I'm facing reality. No, you're not. You're creating reality. And you are dragging me in on a reality that I don't want to create. Now, we don't want you to get up in everybody's grill about things. And it isn't a good idea to push hard against anybody about anything, because you pick a fight, they're better at it. Fighters are really good at fighting. And if you take up the fight with somebody who's a really good fighter, you're going to lose, because you're not a fighter, you're a lover. So don't get into a fight with anybody, because people who fight usually are pretty good at it, and you're not.
Okay. Yeah.
You're not.
I know.
And your inner being isn't good at fighting either. You know why? Because your inner being pushes against nothing. Your inner being goes with the flow. And you know what the flow is? The flow is you having lived life and you putting things in your vortex, and you have established what your flow is, and your inner being is all over that. So when you go with your flow, you're going to feel great. So if you feel like going to see your mother, go to see her. And if it feels good, then stick around for a little while. But when it doesn't feel good, don't stay. And don't talk to other people about it. And don't try to make it more than it is. And don't try to save the world. And don't try to save your mother. And don't try to be the hero of anything. Just go see your mother if you feel like going and seeing your mother. And don't you wish that we could all just stop talking about all of this? Don't you wish that you could just listen to what John Lennon says, which is, all you need is love. Love is all you need. All you need. That's all there is. That's what your inner being feels about all of this. So when you see your mother, there's plenty to love. It's like Esther standing at the carousel worrying about whether her bag was going to come off, because it hadn't come off. And she thought, I can worry or I can have fun, but I can't do both. Make a decision that you're going to choose something that feels good, and then practice it in all the times that you're not in a situation that's harder, which will make it easier to practice it when you are in a situation where it is harder. But most of all, if there is anything that we want you to hear, if there's anything that this segment is of value for you and for anybody else that could ever hear it, if the value that we have offered as we put this energy into the universe is this. Ready for it? You get to choose how you feel, no matter what. And if you think anything else, you're not free. And if you think anything else, you haven't been practicing. And if you think anything else, you are a hostage to society, especially your family. And that is the basis of your resentment to humanity, to your family. In other words, I look at you and I don't feel good and I blame you. You need to live a different life so that when I look at you, you need to thrive, because when I look at thrivers, I feel good. And when I look at people who aren't thriving, I don't feel good. So you owe it to me to thrive. Better send out a memo. You got everybody's email? You got everybody's contact information? You got to tell everybody on the planet. You need to tell them, all right, I'm walking through life and I'm not good at focusing. And I might stumble on you with my thoughts. And I'm not going to be ready if you're suffering. So don't be suffering when I stumble on you. Here's my picture. When you see me coming, At least pretend you're doing good.